Right, let's consider acid and base reactions. Right, number one, we have the models of acid and base. So models simply means acid and base it tlhalosa ke batho ba babedi. First one, they're saying define the acid according to the first one is Arrhenius and the second one is Lowry Bronsted theories. So that is defined in two ways. So let's try to define the acids and bases in two ways. So number one, we have the Arrhenius theory. They're saying acids produce hydrogen ions, which is H plus or H3O plus, which is called the hydronium ions in aqueous solutions. So if we can see that is an acid, so we're going to have a production of H plus or an extra hydrogen proton, which is called a hydronium ions, which is H plus like this in aqueous solution. So following, if we have a production, or this must appear in the solution. So for an acid, it must ionize. So maybe let's say we have HCl. Now when it gets into the water, it will ionize to be H plus Cl minus. So because there is a production of H plus, then it means this is an acid. Now let's check the base according to the Arrhenius. They're saying the base produces the hydroxide ions, which is OH minus in aqueous solution. What do you mean in aqueous solution is when maybe this reacted with water, then it's going to ionize. So ionize out of OH minus. So maybe if we have NaOH, then when it gets into the water, it must ionize first to be Na plus OH minus. Now because of OH minus in the product, then it means this is an acid. Also this is a base because of hydroxide ions. Then the Lowry-Bronsted theory saying an acid is a proton donor. So a proton, what do you mean by proton? Is an hydronium ion, which is a proton donor, it will be donated. A base is a proton acceptor. So Lowry-Bronsted explain with the movement or the transfer of hydronium ions only. So meaning if we can say have a molecule being an acid, it means it must donate the hydrogen ion. Then if it's a base, it must accept the hydrogen ions. So all right, we'll see this in conjugate acid-base pair. Now relative strength of acid and bases. So re check maatla a di acid and base na di measure jwang gore e na le maatla. Now there's a distinguish between re fumane phapano magareng ga strong acid or base and weak acid or base. So with examples. So here are the examples. They're saying if a strong base, if they say explain what is a strong base, say strong base ionizes completely in water to form high concentration of hydronium ions. So it ionizes completely, meaning or they are separated completely. Like HCl, it was separated to H plus and Cl minus. Then it means it's a strong acid. For examples of strong acid, these examples you must know them. There are common acid used in the lab when we're doing the experiments. So we have hydrochloric acid, which is HCl. So when you see HCl, just know it's hydrochloric acid. and strong acid. Sulfuric acid, the formula is H2SO4. Then it's also a strong acid. Then nitric acid is HNO3. So the formula of nitric acid. So these are common used strong acid in the equations of in the examination question papers. But weak acids, they ionizes incompletely in water to form a low concentration of hydronium ions in a solution. So when you say ionizes incompletely, so it means not all of the solution will react. So it means we will have a low number of H3O plus ions in the solution. Then the example of weak acid, we're going to have the ethanoic acid and then the oxalic acids. So the ethanoic acid is C, and then we have in fact C2 H, we can have O2, and then we can have H, how many we must have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it must be H6. So it's something like this, COO, and then we must have this one, hydrogen, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it must be H5, oxygen O2, C2. Now this will be the ethanoic acid, and then the also oxalic acid. So these are the weak acid that will be used in the exam questions. Now the strong bases. So the strong bases, instead of using ionizers, Roshimisha dissociates completely in water to form high concentration of hydroxide ions. So come horrible during OH minus, which is hydrogen or hydroxide ions. As a product base. The example of a strong basis, we have sodium hydroxide, which is NaOH, potassium hydroxide, which is KOH. These are commonly known as strong bases. OH. OH means there is a base. Weak bases dissociate, or we can use the word ionizes incompletely in water to form a low concentration of OH ions. So the difference that the weak will ionize incompletely and form the low concentration of hydroxide ions. So even in acid, the weak will ionize incompletely to form, but here will form the low concentration of hydronium ions, because acid is about the hydronium ions, which are called the protons. Right, the examples of weak bases, we have ammonia, which is NH3. We have calcium carbonate, which is CaCO3. And then what else? We have potassium carbonate. So potassium carbonate, we have K, CO3. So I think it's K2 here, CO3. Calcium carbonate, they're repeating that, and the sodium hydroxide carbonate. Sodium hydroxide carbonate. So the sodium hydroxide carbonate. So let's see what you can write. Sodium hydrogen carbonate, like this. So yeah, so we'll verify this one, sodium carbonate. Right, now this is the difference between the relative strength of acid and bases. So this is kind of the definitions of the weak acid, strong acid, the weak base, and the strong base. Right, we'll check these are the relative strength, and then they are relying on the concentration of protons and the concentration of hydroxide ions. Right, now let's move on to distinguish between the concentration, the concentrated acids or base, and dilute acid and base. Now we can have a strong acid that is not more concentrated, and can have a strong base that is diluted, or strong acid that is also diluted. So let's check the difference between those things. Right, they're saying concentrated acid or base, as long as it's saying concentrated. So it means contains a large amount of acid or of acid or base in proportion to the volume of water. So let's take one. If you say concentrated acid, we're going to say contains a large amount of acid in proportion to the volume of water. So if we're talking about bases, we're going to say concentrated base or bases contains a large amount. So as long as it's concentrated, we're saying it will contain a large amount of base in proportion. So about in proportion, they say inside of water. That's why in proportion to the volume of water. So that's why we say if it's more concentrated, it means there will be more amount of that acid or that base in a volume of water, or in a space of water. Now, when you say dilute acid, it will contain a small amount of acid in proportion to the volume of water. So if it's an acid, it's a base, we'll say a dilute base will contain a small amount of base in proportion to the volume of water. So we define them separately because there is a dilute acid separate and there is a dilute base separate. But the key is that it contains a small amount of that substance, which is if it's a base in proportion to the volume of water. Right, that is the difference between the concentrated and dilute acids and bases. Right, let's consider the acid-base reactions. Now, there are types of acid-base reactions. Now, here are the examples. They're saying HCl added to water. It will form H3O plus and then plus Cl minus. And this is let's say it's a monoprotic acid. Now what happens during HCl adds in water, it will ionize to H plus Cl minus. So when it ionizes, so reload check I'm okay, because HCl is a strong acid. It means this HCl, because we said a strong an acid, according to the Lowry-Bronsted theory, we say it's a proton donor. So this acid HCl must donate this H to this H2O. Now there will be addition of H3. That's why I say H3O plus. So it means what happened here. Now this solution will be acidic because of this is being increased in the amount of the product. Now NH3 plus H2O. Now looking at this one, NH3 is a weak NH3 is a weak base. Now if it's a weak base, then it means it must accept the proton. So that's why NH3 acceptly or H2O, when it ionizes, it will be H plus and OH minus. So rather this H2O in this case it will be a strongest one, then it donate H to NH3, then we're going to have NH4 plus now this OH the richiete it donated the hydrogen hydronium ions or ion, then it becomes OH minus. Then let's get this one, H2SO4 plus H2O. Now before balancing, what happens here? It means H2SO4, we agree that it's a strong acid. Now being a strong acid, irregularly water. So now this strong acid must donate one hydrogen here. One hydrogen of them, there's two hydrogens. Now one hydrogen must be donated, which is hydrogen ion. So running one hydrogen is then I turn H3 plus O. Then now look at what's happening. The whole of H2 is being donated to this or this water here. That's why you have H3. Now running SO4 to the power 2 minus. So already donated all of the two hydrogens. Now because if it's a strong acid and concentrated one, then it donate all of this H2. So Rosonjishal is now H, so that it will become a base. So this is our base here, and then now it donated the two hydrogens, then that's why we have this one H3O plus, and then here we have the SO4 2 minus, which is now will be a base. Then let's check what happened. Well, the solution will be acidic because there is a production of hydronium ions on the product here. And then they're saying H2SO4 is a diprotic acid. That's why it can donate both two hydrogen ions. Right, that is the acid-base reaction, first type. Now identify the conjugate acid-base pair for a given compound. Alright, so we'll just try to check that. Describe a substance that can act as either acid or a base as an ampholyte. Water is a good example of an ampholyte substance. Write an equation to show how an ampholyte substance can act as a base. Or okay, it's fine. Let's interpret this part. They say you must identify a conjugate acid pair. Now let's check the first example here. So first example, let's check this HCl plus H2O, and then we have this one and this one. So looking at this part, the HCl, let's write it here. HCl is an acid plus H2O is a base. How do you see that it's an acid and base? Leveler HCl before reaction, e na le H, but after reaction, a re sa bona HCl, re bona only Cl minus. It means HCl it donated the hydrogen to H2O, then it becomes H3O plus, then here plus Cl. Now because this is now H2O is accepted, so once you accept the hydrogen, so it means it's a base, because as a base is a proton acceptor. Now, okay, now initially we have a acid and a base. Now this acid it donated hydrogen. As not donate hydrogen, inshallah is now the hydrogen. So whereas as na hydrogen Cl minus, now it becomes a base. Now after that we have on the acid base H3O, then now the H2O has gained one hydrogen, then it means now it becomes acid. So when I say a conjugate acid base, or HCl is an acid, but the conjugate base here again is Cl minus. So this is an acid base pair. So the other one is H2O is a base, then it goes back to the acid after gaining the hydrogen. So that is the pair. So if there's identify a conjugate base, here HCl and Cl minus, they are a conjugate of acid base pair. Right, that's what you can say about the conjugate acid and acid base pair. Now they said also describe a substance that can act as that one, the ampholyte. Now, okay, it's fine. We had our H2O accepting hydrogen ion here. But let's look at this direction number 2. Let's color code this. Right, let's look at this. We have NH3 here and then H2O. But look at what is happening here. The H2O, on the other side, isole H2O, but it becomes OH minus. So when it becomes OH minus, it means it has donated the hydrogen to the other. So it means now this time in reaction 1, water accepted, but in this one is donated. So once water it can accept and donate, then it means this water is going to be called what we call an ampholyte, or the amphiprotic substance. So they said this is simply can act either as acid or a base. So on reaction 1 is an acid base, but reaction 2 is an acid. So we call it an ampholyte substance. Now they said write an equation to show that now these are the two equations. If not these two, then we can have one equation that is reversible. So if it's reversible, because we can take the products turning back to the reactants, then it means now we can see that this can be reversible, then we can have one substance being as an ampholyte. Right, next one, they are saying write down the neutralization reaction of common laboratory acid bases. Now, this set here is a reactions of neutralization. So when you neutralize a substance, it means we need to, it's kind of doing the titration. So it means the substance is strong, or even if it's an acid, if I find that the acid is too strong, then we need to neutralize it, and then to a certain level, maybe to be neutral, so that there is between the acid and the base, so that it might have the pH of 7. But you see what they're saying. So the example, we can have HCl will be neutralized by NaOH or KaOH. So when you neutralize, always we take an acid and base. So we cannot neutralize acid by acid. So it must be acid and base neutralizing each other. We add them on top of another one so that they will produce. Now let's check this one. If we have HCl and NaOH, then we're going to have NaCl plus H2O. So what is happening, Gordon? These things will ionize. Let's write direction. All of them, they'll ionize. So HCl will ionize to pH plus and then Cl minus. And this NaOH will ionize to Na plus and then OH minus. I mean, what's happening here? Because this will be mixed in one container. Already, positive, negative, positive. So, okay, then OH and H plus will react together, then they'll form H2O. That's why we have H2O here. And then Na and Cl minus, Na plus and Cl minus, they will attract each other, and then that's why we have NaCl. So that is what is happening here on this reaction. Then the balancing, of course, will happen. Now, the other one, if we have HCl being neutralized by a base of sodium carbonate, so it means we're going to have them again being ionizing, and then after ionizing they will pair. So the Na positive and Cl minus, they will come together. H2O, then it will be there. And then what about this one? There will be a gas that is produced from where? From the carbonate. So once there is a carbonate, our carbonate is CO3 2 minus. Once you see this carbonate, then it means there must be a production of carbon dioxide as part of the product. Right, number 3, so we have nitric acid, then being neutralized by also a strong, being neutralized by a strong base. So what we have, we're going to have NaNO3 plus 2H2O. So we're going to have a water also being part of the product. So we'll talk about that, whether the solution is neutral or is acidic soon. Then now the next part, we also have H2SO4 reacting with this strong base, then that's what we have as the product. And then we can have this other one, which is I think this will be the oxalic acid we're talking about, and then plus NaOH, then this will be the product. So if possible, if this is getting difficult for you, just memorize them, knowing that we're going to have this in the neutralization reactions. So just bear in mind that we're doing neutralization. The above are examples of aqueous or of equations that learners will be expected to write from a given information. They say the above are the examples of equations that the learners will be expected to write from given equation. However, any other neutralization reaction can be given in the question paper to assess for doing the calculations. But mostly you must expect this one, but there are others beside this one, but you must understand this one, then the other ones will not give a problem. So then the next lesson will be about the hydrolysis and the acid-base titrations and the pH scale, and then that will be the theory of acid and base.